What's up, guys? In the last video we finished up this courtyard area to the castle. We also added this giant floating castle in the middle of the courtyard just to give it some extra flair and switch up the type of blocks we were using. We went super heavy with the walls and the fences and the lanterns in this area, but I think it came out looking really nice. You'll see in the rest of this build we don't use as many fences and stuff, so it'll actually end up breaking up the build and making this courtyard area look a little bit more unique. Also, in last episode we started with those blue blocks above this little red area, like I said, just to make it more of a heaven and hell type thing. We start off here with this blue part just to give it some contrast with the red area that we already built, just to, switch up the blocks a little bit. I had an idea to incorporate those blue glass panes on top of the fences there, just because the walls, the stone brick walls that I had used didn't really fit in with the blue theme, and I needed something to add there with the fences for the detailing. But I made a bunch of progress here, and then I ended up just wanting to build another floating structure in the sky. I really liked how our floating castle came out in the middle there, so I wanted to continue with the floating shit. I just like how it looked. Anyways, I kept this going with all the walls and the fences just like we did in the rest of the build so far. And I wanted this structure to be circular, so I started with the circle and then I just pretty much detailed up the corner. And I wanted this build to look a little bit more mystical than everything else we had. And again, I think the glass panes really added to that. I was having a little issues with the gray blocks I was using. I tried to use some dark purple stuff, but that didn't really look good. So I just gave up, and I added like holes in the corner details just to show the blue logs underneath and give it more of a depth. I started finishing up the middle part too. I added like a little lookout tower in the middle of this shell. I spent a while trying to get the roof of this part right. I tried a bunch of things and nothing really was working, but I ended up finding like the perfect solution. There was just too much white going on, and I wanted more of that dark blue in there. I was working a lot with those blue lanterns too, instead of the regular ones that we had used in the rest of the build. Yeah, I really love those glass panes we used at the corners. That mystical look was really strong with this part. Anyway, after this floating structure that I had created, we ended up just moving up to the roof of the castle here. I had these quartz pillars coming from the structure that we just created, and I wanted to just detail those up a little bit, try to finish those as best as I could. And then after that, we had just started on the roof of the actual castle. We'll be doing the interior of this entire castle in a different build. It's not going to be like a super detailed interior, but I'm going to make it look like really nice and big is the look I'm going for. I wanted to add a bunch of lava on this roof just to light it up, and I loved how it looked if you made it sort of into like a light strip. I wanted to add a ton of depth in this roof because I was mostly just working with the regular dark gray blocks, and there wasn't like much of a variation of color here. So instead, I just went with like a ton of depth. And I think that was definitely the way to go because the courtyard area I detailed with like fences and walls. And on this roof area, just to switch things up a little bit, I just went with a lot of, like I said, depth and making things deeper than other areas, and it came out looking great. But I went over here, I finished up these quartz pillars that were coming out. I just added a bunch of detail in the corners just to make these look more thick, like they're actually supporting the structure instead of just floating there. And then I just kept adding bulk near the bottom here again, just to look like this was actually a part of the tower above that we built. I wanted to add some more red down here just because, again, it was looking too dark gray, and the rest of the build had more red in it, so I definitely had to add more red here to make it more uniform. I am going to have like pathways on top of this roof area, so I went ahead and started creating those, making these little entrances to the pathways. I wanted to make this like super extremely detailed. I made like a little area here. It came out looking like a cross, but I wasn't really going for that, but I don't mind it. It looks good anyway. I started creating like a ceiling over this path just to give it a more detailed look. I didn't spend a ton of time on this path yet. I wanted to switch up and finish up these side areas. I was not happy with how this part looked. It just wasn't well integrated. It looked too separate from the rest of the build we had already made, so I wanted to come over here and try to fix that as best I could. What I mean is, like, it separated the courtyard too much from what we were building now, and I wanted it to have a more like flowy look. Most of what I do is when I build is like try to make everything like flow together and not look too walled off, if that makes sense. So like if I'm building one part and then I go to another part of the build, I want that all to look streamlined, like it actually belongs there, instead of having just like strict borders that cut one part of the build off from the next. I think these parts that I did here were my favorite part of this entire build that we did today in this episode. These parts ended up looking like insane. Again, I just went in with a ton of depth there, added some red just to make it look uniform, and then put the lava in there. When I build, I'll oftentimes like take a break and look at what we already built just to make sure everything looks semi-uniform. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with this part, so I took a while trying a bunch of different ideas. I sat here for like over an hour just trying to see maybe what would work. I ended up just trying to make it look as uniform as possible. I love the red I added to outline these little side areas too. And then I just ended up switching back to the path a little bit here. I wanted to go and connect these little side areas I had just made to the middle part that we made as well. So I ended up trying to figure out how to do that. And then also when I was doing all this, I screwed up these walls. So I had to recreate those and copy and paste everything over, but it wasn't too bad. I wanted to finish connecting the side areas we built to the middle part we built, so there was obviously still a big gap there, so I wanted to just connect everything up and not have any gap anymore. I was trying to go with the lava, but it wasn't really coming out right, so I ended up just extending the path over and then just connecting it through that. I just made this cool design in the path, just like the star that we have in the middle of the courtyard. I copy and pasted everything over to the other side at this point. I really liked how this design looked too. This next part was me trying to figure out what to do down here. Again, I wanted it to go with more depth. And then I came out with this design, which looked really nice, and I wanted to just copy and paste it over. So I actually lost like the next hour of recording, but I just skipped to it there, you can see. Anyways, this is a quick overview of everything we did this episode. As you can see, we did a ton. We got this whole blue thing done. I love it though. It's a cool floating structure. It looks nice, especially when we do the rest of the blue that's gonna be up there. I wanted this to look like drone footage, so I was pretty slick with the going through the little entrances we had made. I really did have like a ton of fun with this episode, so I can't wait to do the next one. And that was it, guys. I appreciate you guys watching.